Dave Naylor joins us from TSN. I've been dying, David, to ask you this. Ever since Super Bowl, the question I've been getting a ton is, how was Super Bowl? You were there. I'll ask you that.
The Super Bowl was grandiose, which is the way the NFL does everything, wrapped in grandiose, which is the way Vegas does everything. Everything was bigger and louder and, frankly, more expensive. It was what you would expect. It really is a tremendous spectacle. Seeing the Super Bowl in Vegas, just tons of people, tons of activity, lots of good entertainment. Yeah, I got to say, other than the weather. Vegas gets 20 rainy days a year. The first 3 days of Super Bowl week, rain. And after that, cold. But it's an indoor stadium, so we got by.
Yeah, and then it was cold for the rest of the week. Single digits Celsius, folks. Pray for us. Mm-hmm. But if you're a visual guy, what's the one snapshot that you think of Super Bowl 58? What will you remember?
Well, I'll tell you a little story. In the fourth quarter, the protocol is if you're doing live broadcasting on the field like we are after the game, you're supposed to go down into a holding area, where you kind of watch the game on a monitor. Well, all of us have been in those holding areas before and seen the end of some very dramatic Super Bowls through a small TV in the corner of a room that's about 90 feet away sometimes. So when we were told to kind of go down to the room, James Duffy took the lead and he said, "We're not going. We're staying here. I know a way down to the field, and as long as we do time this right, we can stay here in the bowl and watch the game." So myself, James, Farhan Lalji, Luke Wilson, and David Sanchez all stood at the rail of the 300 level or whatever, watched Patrick Mahomes throw the ball to McCole Hardman, and did a pivot and go down the stairs, beating 62,000 people out of the stadium. We had to actually briefly go outside of the stadium, re-enter it, made it back onto the field after. So watching, it was just so weird because as soon as Hardman caught the ball, we were gone. That is literally my last image of the game.
What a rebel, that James Duffy, and good for him for knowing that little trick of Allegiant Stadium. David, on the topic of football, you are also the CFL guy. It's free agency's cooled now. It's been over for about a week. What are your thoughts on the three-down league leading up to the draft? Not a lot's going to go on here. The coaching staffs have all been named. The free agency's over. What are your thoughts right now as we sit here, mid-February?
I was surprised a little bit that Winnipeg was able to get Schoen and Oliveira back both at 2:30. I mean, I think it was really important for them because so much of the conversation around the Bombers is they're getting older, same guys. So if you're having the conversation around the Bombers of, they're getting too old, they're getting older, how do you let two guys 26 and 27 go out the door? Guys that weren't even part of this dynasty when it began, if you call it that. Certainly getting into Great Cups, it's a dynasty. I thought Ottawa did well, adding they had four things on their list, quarterback, big play receiver, offensive line, coverage linebacker, boom, 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 boom. They got four of those. There was nothing, there was no sort of eyebrow raising. I would think most of the contracts this year in free agency came in under what we expect them, right? We've had the last few years where there was the Geno Lewis contract or the Kenny Lawler contract or, a few others that have kind of raised our eyebrows. This, I would say, for the most part, most of the deals came in under what we would have expected, including, Tim White's deal that was, kind of the last one to fall. And he comes in, kind of in the 2 to 250 range, with some incentives played in there. So, I mean, look, Toronto, lost a ton of players. We knew they were going to do that. I think they're one of the most intriguing teams just because of how dominant they were last year and how much now their roster has been raked over, and they made some choices to keep guys. They made some choices to let guys walk. That's an intriguing one for me as well.
It's interesting. Three Down Nation had as their power rankings leader this week the Argos. I see the Vegas, or the Bet Regal favorite to win the Grey Cup, the outright right now, is Winnipeg. And Montreal's the defending champion. They're fourth or fifth. So that's kind of interesting. That kind of screams CFL, doesn't it?
Yeah, look, I think Winnipeg does look like the dominant team in the West again. And look, it's always funny because we always have this fun at TSN, right? We look back at what we said on the preview shows, you pull clips and things like that. I mean, it's funny because you think of last year, the Argos had been were the defending Grey Cup champs. They opened at home against Hamilton as underdogs and then blew them out, right? Just because people weren't convinced on Chad Kelly. So the weird thing last year is I believe somebody sent me this. Every once in a while you get a fan who sends you something and it's actually like, wow, I didn't know that. It was in the 9-team CFL. I don't believe there had ever been 2 years where the standings were identical, 1 through 4, 1 through 5 in the two divisions. It had happened in the 8-team CFL at times, and Ottawa was out of the league. There were a couple times. So we had an identical carbon copy league, which is not usually what happens. As you say, usually it's the unpredictable. You had the same 3 teams miss the playoffs: Edmonton, Saskatchewan, and Ottawa. And in Saskatchewan's case, you saw them repeat after Labor Day what had happened the year before. So there was a lot of repetition last year in the CFL. If you were somebody who was banking on the same thing happening, you would have come pretty close, short of Montreal winning the Grey Cup. I think Montreal still has a bit of prove it because they weren't the dominant team. They won. They won in the playoffs. They beat Hamilton comfortably. They shocked Toronto, and they made the play at the end. But I don't know if people say, they're definitely the dominant team. I think people still lean in Toronto because of what 16 years.
Man, we could go longer, but you're getting choppy there, Dave. I appreciate that. We certainly got the point of it, and I'm sure Montreal's just fine going under the radar as far as predictions go in February. David, thanks for the time, man.
Catch
up with you soon.